The next list in the items for which one is Ochel Peroteha Min Olam Hazeh and a Keren is reserved Le'olam Haba, a list that is recorded in Masechet Shabbat Kuf Chaf Zayin Amud Aleph, is the topic of Iyoon Teffilah. Recounting the distinction made earlier regarding the items in this list, 5 of the items relate to Bein Adam Lechavero, man to man, while 2, attending the Bet Medrash, morning and evening, and Iyoon Teffilah, relate to man and God. The first of the 2 items involves the Bet HaMidrash, as opposed to the Bet Knesset. The Bet Medrash was a place for Limud Torah. With respect to Iyoon Teffilah, the focus is upon the communication between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and man through the medium of Tefillot. The activating word is Iyun, with an Ayin Yud Nun Shoresh. The first 3 translations involved the Einayim, the eyes, to look askance, to look carefully, to search and investigate. The translations also have a mental/thinking side, as expressed in the next 3 translations. Ayin Yud Nun, to think over, to contemplate, to deliberate, to balance exactly in terms of prioritizing 2 options. The outlier of this group, Ayin Yud Nun, to read casually, to look up a quotation. In the context of Iyoon Teffilah, to look carefully at the words one is reciting, to search and investigate a deeper meaning in those words, to meditate, to think over, to contemplate. All 3 could be applied to the exercise of Iyoon Teffilah. In terms of translation, the Chabad Siddur renders Iyoon Teffilah as concentration in prayer, while the Koran and the Monk Siddurim prefers devotion in prayer for the Iyoon Teffilah. Before moving on to the final item of Elu Dvarim etc., it might be useful to unpack the term Iyoon Teffilah. The problem with translation is that they function in a particular context, and that context over time might change. The main definitions for devotion in the 21st century is 1, deep love, 2, an act of giving, 3, a religious exercise. None of these definitions, I believe, adequately describe the concept of Iyoon Teffilah in a Jewish context, and hence one might need to look elsewhere for a more adequate definition. Providentially, last Shabbat, I pulled off my bookshelf of Chaim Miller's in-depth treatment of the Rebbe's life. The little bit of Hashgacha Pratit is reflected in the fact that I somewhat randomly opened to a page that I was able to link into the topic of Iyoon Teffilah. Chaim Miller records a segment of a Sikha from Parashat Kitisa 1980, where the Rebbe discusses the tension between, on the one hand, the spreading of Torah and mitzvot, summarized in the concept of kiruv, and on the other hand, the need for self-improvement through Iyoon Teffilah. In summarizing the words of the Rebbe in that Sikha, Chaim Miller writes that there are those who argue that the previous Rebbe, the Rayat's father-in-law of the Rebbe, laid a heavy stress on the study of Torah and the spreading of Torah mitzvot to others. They maintain that it's necessary to apply oneself to these areas with self-sacrifice, Mesirat Nefesh, and hence, in other areas of Judaism, for example, Iyoon Teffilah, contemplative prayer, is not that important. This is the view that the Rebbe expresses as of 1980, where the emphasis was on shlichut, kiruv activity, at the expense of personal growth in areas such as Iyoon Teffilah. The Rebbe goes on to note that the rationale for this approach is that the Iyoon Teffilah promoted by the Rebbe Rashab in the first half of the 1900s was important, but times have changed. The focus of the organization is outreach, kiruv, and efforts in the areas of Iyoon Teffilah are no longer relevant. In a harsh rebuttal of this mindset, the Rebbe applies the words attributed to Paro, who, in response to a request by Moshe Rabbeinu that the Bnei Yisrael should be permitted to leave Egypt to worship HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Paro's answer is Nirpim atem nirpim. The Jews are basically lazy. They don't want to work. And Al Kain, on account of this laziness, they say, Nelcha v'nizbecha la Hashem. Please let us leave, let us go and offer sacrifices and worship Hashem. Serious Iyoon Teffilah requires time and effort, and those who promote kiruv activity at the expense of Iyoon Teffilah are really too lazy to be involved with prolonged contemplative prayer. The Rebbe goes on to suggest that these people, rather than admit the truth, they try to rationalize their behavior, arguing that since the Rebbe Rayatz stressed the importance of ufaratzta and kiruv, it therefore is unnecessary to become involved with tefillah. This has been Chaim Miller's summary of a sicha from the Rebbe, Parshat Kitisa 1980. A possible flow-on from this account is that Iyoon Teffilah is not just merely the recitation of words, a speed-reading exercise of shacharit to be completed in less than 15 minutes, but rather the activity of contemplative prayer, meditation, prolonged thought, and introspection of the words of the Siddur.